So welcome to podcast number 17. Today we have a very interesting guest who's doing very interesting things. He's a turntablist from down under and a regular fixture in the Australian DMCs. He's also an inventor. He makes little scratch devices and combines it with coding to make scratchy sounds. So last year Nikk C blew me away with his video demo of what he was calling Datablism. And the idea is kind of using data programmatically to enhance turntablism scratching and djing. So the demo video showed him scratching like while a graphical representation scrolled along, essentially like live TTM or turntable transcription method. It showed the velocity of the record, the kind of position relative to the other samples, or the where it was in the record groove, and the fader clicks. So lucky for me, Nikk C and his buddy Max Best traveled all the way from Australia to Berlin for Sample Music Festival to give a talk and do a demo. So we sat down and we discussed kind of how he got into programming, scratching, and the really limitless possibilities of Datablism. For the performance video next, he made a video showcasing how the live TTM setup he made works. That's just really one small idea off of the whole idea of Datablism. I don't think I want people to get it confused like that's what it all is, that one little demo, but that's just like one idea that applying the kind of thought process he came up with. So I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did, and be sure to follow and like Nikk C for updates on Instagram and Facebook, and you can see things that he's working on. And as always, support the podcast and download the Playground app for some dope scratch beats for your next session. That's the sick beat you're hearing behind my voice now. Alright, so that's it. Enjoy, man. So who are you? What's your name? Where are you from?
Yeah, nice. Yeah, well, my name's Nikk C. It took me a bit of a while to kind of come up with a DJ name, I guess, after I finally got my first set of turntables. So I couldn't really come up with a gimmick or anything like that. So I just ended up with just a funny spelling of my own name.
Yeah.
So that's I'm Nicholas Karras, so Nikk C. Kind of it stuck, and it's never really kind of served me any.
That's the same with me. Last name's Cubic, so I'm just gonna go by Cubic. It's easy.
I don't have any kind of
special
demeanor to live up to.
I know you've been cutting for a long time, but when did you first get into scratching? Like, in the 90s, right? Late 90s? Or?
Yeah, I noticed scratching in the late 90s.
Yeah.
Kind of discovered a couple of things on the internet, and also on Australian radio there was a band called the Avalanches.
Mm-hmm.
They were very kind of heavily sample-based music, and they had a particular song called Frontier Psychiatrist that was had lots and lots of cool sampling and scratching in it. And it really was kind of one of the first times in Australian commercial music. Well, not even commercial music, but it was sort of coming from the underground,
right.
The alternative station. It really made a big impression because up until then, hip hop was predominantly just where you would go to find scratching sounds and stuff. So having this cool sort of narrative song was really kind of big, and I heard that, and it really kind of changed my perspective of what I thought music was sort of meant to be. Like, I was a teenager that was sort of learning guitar and stuff. But
yeah, so I was going to ask, so you were playing some instruments before that, like you said, learning guitar
and all that sort of stuff, but, you know, I would try and learn it, but some of the musical mechanics were a bit beyond me. Like, my father loved watching like Jimi Hendrix, you know, a few other guitarists that were really gifted in improvisation stuff, and I think that's where I really gained a lot more inspiration from, rather than the whole musical stuff, which I really, really appreciate, but I really love the whole improvisational nature of stuff. And I wanted to be able to do that, but still my fingers weren't you know, like picking up with what I was wanting to deliver. And then I sort of discovered that scratching sound in Frontier Psychiatrist, and I thought, yeah, this is really, really cool, so I'm going to research this a little bit more. Yeah. And then I discovered this, like, you know, internet scratch forum. It was called ScratchCon at the time on the Turntable News Network, and I was like a very young sort of kid, so I got a username and all that. Very much a lurker, just watching the discussion and stuff. And I guess around that time, like late 90s, early 2000s, it was like people weren't really realizing that this new fifth element of hip hop had sort of just dawned on us. The internet. It was like this kind of meeting place for all these people. So yeah, after doing some research on the internet, like I kind of discovered the whole world of like DMC competitions, and also like some of the big names that were already sort of making a bit of career for themselves with the industry, like Invisible Scratch Pickles in particular. I discovered the Clams and Death routine, and I can remember the defining moment in the routine. Like, I thought it was like from front to back it was all intensely amazing, but I can remember the moment where they ramp up the electro beat, and then, you know, it's time, and where Shortcut goes into that awesome stab section, that syncopation, that rhythm, that pattern. It's just like, this is the sound I'm really searching for. This is how I want to deliver stuff with aggression, and it's percussive, it's rhythmic, it's you know, you're manipulating pitch, you're doing all these sorts of things, and it's just like, it's kind of like a brand new instrument. People haven't explored all of it yet, and it was at the time where DMCs were like, people were looking forward to next year to see like what crazy shit people are going to do next year.
What's the new insane technique that's coming out?
Exactly. It was starting to move away from kind of like silly body tricks or props, like basketballs and chainsaws and fucking strings and stuff like that.
That craze that the no body tricks, and the beginning does a little body trick, no body tricks, no body tricks.
That's it. Word. So it was in a really interesting time where like I was watching these routines, if I could like find one to download, like RIP, like LimeWire or Napster, all these things, but that was the only way I could really get it, because I'm in Australia, and you know, I guess with the tariff on all the DMC tapes back in the day, I didn't have the earning capacity to really justify doing it. So what I would do is just like, if I could find a routine, I'd like dub it to cassette, and I would like listen to the routines on the way to school, sort of thing. Like, I remember like listening to like you know, DJ Noise's routine, you know, the one that took him to the to the finals, you know, to the World Championships. It's just, I still think that's one of the holy grail kind of routines. It just has everything that you would want in there. It's got like the early foundations of tone play and really neat juggling. Like, the wordplay was absolutely just spot on. The way
he's amazing for that.
You know, rock reader.
Dude,
you know, it's just so fucking, it's just like, that was just awesome. And you kind of think back on that routine, it's just like, it's a song. Like, even Dexter's routines in that era. You know, Australia's.
I forgot about Dexter, actually. Now that you mentioned him.
Yeah, look, he's a massive inspiration to us, and his brother, also DJ Kuya, is rest in peace. He passed away semi-recently, but he was definitely one of the most sort of influential kind of early scratching DJs. He really made a big impact in the ITFs and stuff. If you look back through the ITFs, you'll find DJ Kuya. And he was brothers with he and Dexter are brothers.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they were part of like a DJ kind of crew, mostly Filipino Australian guys. They were called the 2 Minute Needles.
The 2 Minute Needles.
They really paved a big way for Australian turntables.
When were they like real active? I guess late 90s, early 2000s.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. In fact, the first DJ workshop I ever went to, DJ Kuya was operating it, and like I can still remember the sort of the advice and the sort of things that he was teaching, and how open he was to questions. Like, at some point, like after sort of going through the fundamental scratches and everyone's sort of chin stroking a bit, I'd already spent a fair bit of time like listening to scratches, but not understanding sort of how to do them. Like I think I'd only just gotten turntables or something. I pressured my parents a lot to get decks. But once I finally had turntables, I needed to understand these sounds. I just didn't have access to the videos. And I remember him, like, I was trying to explain, he's like, there's this one sound that goes, and so it's like, oh, cool, yeah, that sounds like hydroplanes. It's just like, you know, the way I'd practice those is just like, I would just like sit on the train, like on the way home from work.
With the lap scratch?
I just practice on the ledge of the tram, just like try and get that and I just still remember that moment. There's just like him sort of explaining these little sort of anecdotal sort of things, and I still kind of, I still think of it when I'm sitting on the tram and I'm just practicing little hydroplanes and stuff like that. Gotta wash my hands on public transport, but still, like, those guys really paved a massive way for the Australian, DJ scene. Like,
and they were out of Melbourne?
Melbourne as well. There was a hip hop radio show. I think it was called the Freestyle Show on PBS. Maybe it was Kiss FM in Australia, but like the radio station wasn't really set out for having hip hop DJs, so they would have to lug up all their own turntables and crates and compressors or whatever they needed to make the show sound great. Jay Red and Kuya would just like hold it down. It's like it was before the time where I could really access this stuff. I was still kind of in a different city, didn't have access to radio in the same way that we do now. You can't tune into a station from another city sort of thing. So I now, having moved from Queensland in Australia down to Melbourne, I'm sort of discovering more and more of this rich sort of history and meeting a lot of these sort of like heroes of the Australian scratch game sort of thing. And I kind of sort of pinch myself sometimes. It's like, I'm actually associating with people that I really, really look up to.
Yeah, same here. I know what you mean.
Exactly. We're in the presence of our heroes, but I think that's also a really cool thing about this subculture. Like,
it's such a small niche. It's easy to connect with their heroes in a way, like they're not so inaccessible as some other things,
Yeah, like I guess if you looked top down from the whole DJ culture, you kind of, it does get into a bit of ego-driven kind of stuff. But now that things have kind of simmered a bit after like years of battling and all that sort of thing, like everyone's just really encouraging for each other, and it's a really beautiful scene. I think like I've met some of the most kind of like beautiful friends in my life through this, and it's really, really great.
Yeah. So when you first got into it, was there, I know you said you went to that workshop, was there any like friend or somebody that you were learning with, or that was like kind of take you under their wing, or even just somebody that was like, oh, I'm gonna try it too, and that they were cutting with or still cutting with?
No, not really. It took me a fair bit of a fair while to actually find anyone in the city that scratched. I knew who the DMC sort of stars were in the city, and like I would sort of not stalk them or anything but it was just like there was this fanboy. Like I remember the year, like I was 17, so not able to get into bars and stuff. I knew where the DMC was, see if I can like grow out my moustache, just like those little hairs, just enough to maybe be convincing, but I couldn't get in. So my alternative was trying to like sort of watch through the bars at the car park, and I could actually sort of see through, and that was the closest I could get to the battle. So I was definitely watching different characters within the city, but there was no one really necessarily sort of took me under their wing and sort of like mentored me in that sort of way. But after sort of starting to like get into it more, and then sort of finding where some of these like hip hoppers are, like I eventually kind of turned up to a b-boy jam kind of thing, and met this guy DJ Bacon, and he was very much like a walking encyclopedia sort of thing. He knew all the breaks. He came from a b-boy pedigree kind of thing, and he was just like super encouraging. It was like he was one of the first kind of like heroes that I sort of met, and he's still super active at the moment. Like he's producing like all these sorts of mega mixes and stuff like that. Like and he's getting recognition from like Ice-T and like Chuck D and all these kind of worldwide figures. And it's like it's really good that he's definitely continued with his stuff. So that's a really important figure. DJ Sheep was another guy that I really looked up to. He was another kind of guy that had a really rich knowledge of drum breaks and samples, and had very, very rich connections with DJs all around the world. So it was just like, wow, this is like, if you really kind of focus in on this culture, you can kind of be in the presence of your heroes. So that was really good. And another character that I met fairly early on was DJ Bride. His name is Angus, DJ Angus. If you look back in the DMC Australian history, he was one of the kind of one of the vets. He was from the early disco mix club kind of days. He really
the really old school stuff.
But Cool Herc knows who Bribe is. He was a really important figure. So when I was introduced to him, I kind of, at that moment, I really didn't sort of understand the greatness of who I was sort of meeting.
Yeah.
But after, I actually met him at this night. This is a cool story. So when the Scratch movie was released, they had a tour that was sort of happening with it, and when it came to Brisbane in Australia, the music venue, they kind of had it full with seats as if it were a cinema sort of thing. So everyone would arrive and we'd all sit down, and all the movie would come on, and everyone's just cheering and all. It was just I can just still imagine the vibe in the room, and get introduced to Bribe at this show. And after the movie's finished, everyone's just so pumped up, and we all everybody helps pack up all the chairs, hundreds of chairs get packed up, and then the show starts, and Jazzy J Rock and Q-Bert come out and just slay it for hours. It's almost like they didn't want to get off stage, and everyone's just so into it, and after I met Bribe, after that, he I kind of ran into him whilst in Melbourne after winning my first state DMC, and he was just you gotta come around to my place, you get to see my DJ collection. I gotta show you some things, and he showed me some really classic trick mixing doubles, the foundation kind of stuff, and he was just go through my crates, just pick a record, just it's just a gift, just take whatever one you want. I was just what? Shit.
Such a nice guy.
It's just he was he was just really beautiful guy. Rest in peace. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but he was a really massive figure as well. You can actually, if anyone's interested in looking out for him, I believe there is a documentary made about him called Flow. I think about Angus. It's definitely a good watch. People put in a lot of effort to rack up whatever file footage they could of him.
Nice,
So
nice.
we've definitely got some influential figures in Australia.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Really cool. So then, so that was your first state. So in Australia, how many states do you, I know it's kind of ignorant, but how many states do you have in Australia?
Yeah, we've got 7. We've
seven.
got,
okay. I thought it was 5 or 6. I wasn't sure, to be honest.
But not all of them will have a DMC.
Right, of course. There's somewhere just barren.
Exactly.
Much around.
You could probably count on your hand. How
so when they do
there
DMCs, so you guys have how many are there usually statewide, and then you do the national. So how many are there usually?
Usually there's Queensland, New South Wales, ACT, Victoria, Tasmania, South Australia, and Western Australia.
Right.
There's in fact so there's Northern Territory, but they're the state who don't generally have one of the ones. So if you live in the Northern Territory, you'll generally fly to a different. You have to choose what state you want to do. Yeah. Or if you want to.
But that's a lot. There's a solid amount of people there. Then that are entering these.
Yeah, I don't mean to poo-poo the scene or anything like that, but we are in a bit of a time where we need to encourage more people.
Yeah, I see it in Europe, where there's a DMC potentially announced for a country like Germany, and then canceled because no entries. I've seen it happen a lot. So it's kind of surprising to me that you guys have that many states having regionals. That's pretty cool.
Exactly, and it's actually becoming more surprising. I've just found out, in the last sort of day or so, that some of the states that were known as being some of the more quiet states are actually getting way more entrants than the ones that were a lot more popular and busy.
Are there lots of young people entering over there?
We're starting to find more of that. Yeah. We've got figures in the scene K-Swiz and the Redders and all that sort of thing. And then it's good to have ambassadors like this to kind of show younger kids that you don't necessarily need to kind of have all of the other sort of things that kids need. It's as long as you've got a hobby, you can really carve out a really great career for yourself. And it's amazing that we do have these little ambassadors to
it's great.
Show other kids that this is a hobby that's very tangible.
Yeah, when I was in Japan, Miyajima and Kinwon both said that they saw a big resurgence in their schools. They're teaching scratching. with like the last 2 years with Reina. Like they're like,
Yeah.
you know, he's on Pepsi commercials with pop stars, and like,
Yeah.
like all of a sudden we were getting contacted by 12 to 14-year-olds a lot more instead of just like 35-year-olds wanting to cut better. You know?
Because we're becoming older and older.
Yeah,
you know, my grey hairs and starting to show.
I think the portables had a big influence on this too, because like
exactly.
I've seen so many people that like used to scratch, didn't for 10 years, now they're getting back into it because they can just pop a portable for 150.
Exactly.
It's just like a really quick entry level.
You don't have to justify to your partner a whole
no, 1,000. Yeah, you don't have to justify a month's salary.
Exactly.
For stuff.
And also for the kids, like, you know, if they see one of these portables, it's like they get a little tug on the shoulder, sort of thing. It's just like
it's not out of reach for a birthday present.
Exactly.
Christmas present for your average family and all that. So it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I really like the kind of the DIY entrepreneurial kind of nature of portablism as well. Like
so speaking of the DIY stuff, I guess I was going to ask about DMC because you said you entered that one. When was the first time you entered a DMC?
I think my first one was like 2005.
Yeah.
Placed second, which was like really like it was really big for me. Like I realized that I was super surprised. Like my routine was fairly, I guess, not fully oddball, but it was using some of those traits that were coming out of that sort of that era that I had just sort of finished up. So I had sort of weird stickers on my record. I had these stickers that were sort of flicked up a little bit, and I had to use the lever arm to pull the tone arm up, and these things were flicking underneath the styles. So it was similar to the Kentaro.
Right. I see.
But I had kind of made some sort of like sound designing helicopter sound. That was sort of like that, and you know, it was just like
that's a cool idea. The stickers, fun. Tickling the needles.
Exactly. Because I couldn't really afford new needles every week.
So I don't want to screw these needles.
So doing the routines like the Kentaro one, it was like, you know, I wanted to do something like this, but I kind of still had to keep it safe. So that was really, really good, and it sort of helped me understand that, you know, it's like you got to do something in your routine that's even like innovative for you, like because otherwise you're not really challenging yourself so much. So you know, I think after that, I think I may have gotten second again in 2006, and then 2007 was the first time I actually won. Oh no, it was 2008 was the first year that I actually won a Queensland DMC. Okay. And then I went down to Melbourne in the Nationals and got absolutely smashed. Sort of thing. It's just, but like,
do you remember how you placed or
no, I don't even.
Or who you went against or anything like that? Or?
It was the year when DJ Perplex was absolutely owning it. And like I remember some of the standouts that night were like definitely DJ G Smooth, DJ Zeke was another massive one from that year as well. You know, Zeke is one of our biggest kind of exports at the moment. He's just killing the heavy bass game, and being a turntablist as well. He's a good ambassador for these crossed styles. But that was a pretty cool year. But my routine was definitely not amongst the sort of caliber that would really get you into that upper echelon. Like I call it being fairly green when it comes to, you know, having like a really tight technical juggle or a tight power cut or something like that. It's like I really liked making kind of weird routines with weird sounds and stuff like that, and like trying to do the whole Dexter sort of thing. I would use rock and roll. Like I was a bit of a metal kid as well at the same time. So it was just like, you know, I want to be scratching to a double time like Dillinger Escape Plan section sort of thing, like from Sunshine the Werewolf sort of thing. Just because like these sounds are like, you know, to me, like I find them exciting. They doesn't have to be hip hop or anything like that. DJ Broke from Australia summed it up kind of pretty well recently. It's just like, you know, I don't choose sounds because it's a particular genre. I choose my sounds for routines because I'm looking for battle sounds, and that's a really good way to describe it. You can find battle sounds amongst any kind of genre.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it definitely taught me a lot about, you know, how to make a routine that is probably a little bit more safe. But, you know, it's sort of still taken me a while to still kind of get to the point where, like, I think that my routines might kind of get into the top 3. At the moment, I'm double bronze in Australia, so I've gotten 3rd in Australia, you know, twice.
Okay. On the national,
at the national level, After 2008, there was a bit of a gap of DMCs in Australia.
I remember that. Yeah.
So we stopped having them for a while, and when they came back, I think I just sort of picked it back up again. But it was kind of like I'm doing it because I want to be doing it, not I'm super hungry for for a battle or
Right.
for a title. But you know, it happens like this. Like some years I really want it, some years I really couldn't care about the result.
Yeah.
And it's funny because the years I don't care so much about the
That's when
result,
you do better.
you do better.
Yeah.
So
Whenever you think you got it in the bag, that's when you're gonna lose.
Yeah.
And then be super disappointed.
exactly. So yeah, it's funny like that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
but yeah, you should like never neglect practicing or anything
Right.
like that. I'm not saying like jump in there and do a whole freestyle DMC entry. Like I don't know, have you ever seen the DJ disc routine?
Not in a long time, but yeah.
It's like, you know, you watch it and the story goes, apparently he just ended on the fly. He may have been on like a tab or something like that. And you're just watching him and you're kind of watching the brain movements. It's just like he's freestyling the whole thing. But one of the funniest things about the whole routine is like you're watching in the back, Funkmaster Flex is like, what the fuck? Just like the eyebrows are in the sky like the whole time. You look up that routine, it's really fun. It's awesome to see. But like you could go full freestyle, you could have a little bit of room for funkiness and stuff like that. I feel like when I go to the extreme and I've like got like everything super rehearsed, that's when my cuts start to actually feel a lot more nervous and I miss clicks and I do all the nervous sort of stuff. So that you're gonna have that sort of balance.
We were talking about that with some guys about like freestyle scratch battles and like people who like, okay, now I'm gonna do this combo and this combo and this combo, and then people who just actually freestyle scratch in a freestyle scratch battle, you know?
Yeah.
And about like you won't, if you don't have a plan, you won't mess up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So you don't necessarily get the nerves as bad if you're a little. Some of the guys were arguing like that's the way to always go about it. Is like don't have a plan for the combos you're gonna do, or even try to like not do that. You listen to the guy before you and you're like, oh, I can do that better than him. That combo better, so I'm gonna start with that or whatever. And like even just ignore the other person and just do it. Just do it yourself, and that way, if you do make a mistake, repeat the mistake, and there's no mistake, and you don't feel like you let yourself down or you made the mistake.
Yeah, precisely.
Other people don't notice what you're expecting. You have a higher expectation of yourself than what the others watching do, of course. So
yeah, totally.
That's always the trick, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So then, when does the whole I'm gonna say it right, the datablism.
Datablism. So in the world of all these isms and stuff like Babu, I'm sorry that what we're doing to this word, but
I kept throwing in a table in there yesterday. I kept saying datatablism, and they were like, no, take out table.
But like it really is. It looks good on paper, but it's just like it's not a word that rolls off the tongue so easily. But for me, like the philosophy of this thing, Datablism, is like, you can be turntablist, but like when you're doing the performance and stuff, like you may not realize it, but you're generating different forms of data.
Yeah.
And like in this digital age now, you've got like DVS and mixers that send MIDI. You may not realize that they're sending MIDI because you're still using them like an analog mixer, but still underneath the chassis, like it's still spitting out data.
Right.
So like I like the idea that maybe we can latch onto that. Maybe we can do something interesting with it, like beyond just mapping a MIDI controller to a piece of DJ software, kind of going a bit beyond that and kind of trying to make really advanced mappings or something that starts to involve levels of programming where you can actually sort of expand on the behavior of DJ software that already exists, or even just make your own software.
Right. So then how did you I don't know, like how'd you get in the idea of programming in general? Like were you doing something for work or school or?
Yeah, well,
how did you get into that aspect of it?
I started off at university in IT, but it didn't really work out for me. I became very disenchanted about how quickly the industry was moving, and I'd spent 6 months learning maybe a coding language and then became redundant. Like, oh man, this sucks. So I went over to a degree which was a Bachelor of Arts with a major in sound design. And it was a good spectrum of all sorts of various forms of creativity, sound design, sound production, all that stuff. But there was this one particular unit that was like teaching you how to use Max MSP. Max MSP is like a kind of like a programming environment that lets you connect like little building blocks together, and you build things that are called patches. You're patching little blocks together, and each block like conducts a particular purpose.
Right. Yeah.
It's got its job, and you're flowing your little numbers and signals all around the place, similar to a modular synth. You're patching stuff around, so it's a different form of programming, and I kind of liked it a lot more than what I was learning in IT school with hard lines of code and trying to compile something and all this sort of crap. And at university with IT, they were just trying to teach us how to make a shitty website or a fucking SQL or like how to make a chat client or something that was.
And this is probably what year is this? 2001, 2000.
Yeah, exactly. 2002, precisely.
2002.
Yeah, exactly. It was at that time where Macromedia were getting bought by
Java was like the new big thing to learn and all that.
Yeah, exactly. RIP was it LingoScript or something like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was. Like I kind of discovered this programming environment, and they were teaching us how to like make little things. It could be making a metronome or something that clicks like a beat, like it measures a BPM when you click something.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, okay, this is really sort of cool. It's like there's no real limit to what you can make with this. This isn't just like for musicians. This isn't just for programmers. This is like if you've got an idea about what you might want to make.
Yeah.
There's generally a way you could sort of do it. So I think one of the things that sort of woke me up to it is like my friend was making a video game. He was trying to make a spelling bee video game where it was like you got to type in the word. You got to
tell them to stop this for 1 second. Sorry.
Can I have an ashtray when you come back?
Yeah. Okay. Hey. Like a bottle.
No, that's fine, man. Cheers.
They're like, oh shit, sorry.
That's good. Are you still rolling?
Yeah. I just let it keep going.
I probably won't even edit that out.
All good. Yeah. So where was I?
Sorry about
that. A friend of mine was making like a spelling bee video game. It was like he wanted it to be like the mascot says spell dog.
Yeah.
And you have to type in dog to get it correct. And I was like, okay, cool. Like. To populate this game, we need a fucking lot of sound files.
Yeah.
So to me, like having to record all of these words represented a lot of work. Even if you had like someone say all the words one after the other in one long continuous session, it still means you'd have to grab each word, identify it,
trim it,
all that sort of stuff. And
label
it's just
it.
like, this is kind of annoying. Like, what if in Max I could make something that the sound artist can go into the mic booth and he's got a laptop in front of him. It says the word on the screen that he needs to say. The word itself is a button, so when you're clicking the button and holding it down, it's recording a new file that's going to be named that.
Yeah.
And when you let go, it
stops,
records the file. If you need to go back and do it again, just go back.
Yeah.
So I made this thing that sort of automated the process of start recording, record it, stop recording, save it, next one. And we had 2,000 words as audio files within a couple of hours.
Nice.
It was just bang, 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 bang. It was just
that saved a lot of time.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, okay, cool. It's like, this doesn't have to be for making like music or compositions. It's like, we had a job to be performed and we strategized a little program to make out of it. So, that was really great. And then I guess a couple of years later, I was like, well, why don't I start like playing around with MIDI and my turntables and my mixes and stuff like that and see what I can sort of do amongst this. And I really like scratching with the up faders. Like it's a really cool sort of aggressive way of scratching, especially when you got the sharp.
Back to shortcut, right?
Back to shortcut, exactly.
It switches, it's stuck with you,
Exactly. That aesthetic is something I really like, but not all the time will you get a mixer that lets you kind of cut sharp at the top.
Right.
But I also I noticed that there's a whole area of the up fader that I wasn't using anymore because I'm always cutting sharp at the very, very top.
Right.
So what can I do to bring some life back to that part of the fader? So I kind of came up with this idea, and this was the first sort of experiment that sort of woke me up to the turntablist element. Was what if I could be scratching on the top of the up fader, and then all of a sudden, if I drop the fader all the way to the bottom in a quick motion, the volume would still turn back on instead of turning the volume off.
Right.
So you get you the most
double-sided fader in a way.
Sort of. Open it back up on the other side. But if you do it quick enough, you're not even going to break the audio. It's not even going to be a gap. But if you turn the audio back on, but now there is an effect on or something like that, and now this knob can controls the amount of a filter cutoff or something like that, so I can go pa 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 straight to the bottom, and then it becomes like a filter cutoff, and then once I reach the top of the fader again, it returns to the mode that it was originally on. So the volume's back at the top, the effect is off, and it's straight back to being a regular fader. It's like, oh cool, like I'm making this multi-purpose fader that's got like kind of like custom modes in it, and that's just like the beginning. It's like, well, like this is kind of limitless now. Like I can start expanding on the behavior of DJ software without having to wait for Native Instruments to make a new thing, because you know, if they release something like that, it becomes homogenized into the DJ kind of repertoire. Like we're seeing it a little bit with tone play and stuff at the moment, where you know it's sort of become a bit of a fundamental for battling, but also
especially like Red Bull 3 style. It's like
exactly.
Here's the tone play section. It's like the mandatory checklist of that.
Yeah, exactly. Who's going to be tone playing Gwen Stefani fucking this year or in the next episode? You know, it's like I don't know if you're a fan of The Simpsons, but
of course.
Like, you know, the Rappin' Ronnie Reagan tape with the it's like, in some ways I kind of feel like we're dumbing down some of the techniques back to the, you know, that kind of crappy sort of sampling sort of thing. Like I love Tackhead and like in, you know, Paul Hardcastle and freaking, you know, those artists who do that sampling style, sort of Malcolm McLaren, you know, that sort of thing. I love it, but you know, kind of if we're moving forward, we should really kind of start kind of employing more musical, you know, mechanics and those sort of beautiful things. And, you know, as opposed to the way I was beginning, not really being interested in the musical stuff, now I'm super interested in the musical stuff because, you know, we're trying to really paint ourselves as musicians, and we're trying to validate the turntable constantly as a musical instrument, but, you know, there's always something kind of missing that's not validating us right or whatever. But, so I kind of like the idea. It's like, oh shit, I can start, you know, making things work the way I want them to, or you know, I want something customized just for me, or if I have an idea for a friend, like I know a friend's particular style is like, you would really benefit from having a magic button that does this, that would make your life so much easier. And I'm not saying this is like a way that you can cheat or anything like that. It's just like, this is a way to get you away from the bullshit that...
to optimize and... I mean, there's a million things there, right? Like, there was a few years back, Native Instruments had a panel talk here with Rafik and Craze and Uncut, and it was, so the QA session, somebody was like, what do you think about the sync button? Expecting them to all be like, fuck the sync button, we're turntablists, and every one of them was like, fucking love it. Yep. Like, are you kidding? I'm busy, man. I'm DJing out, I've got a million things to do, like, that helps me just move on with my workflow. Like, I don't have anything that also those guys, what do they have to prove? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
They're like, I'm not trying to be like, I'm not trying to play vinyl only and like, no, it's awesome. I use it as a tool to move on and do other cool shit, and I don't need to sit there and beat match. I learned, beat matching 20 years ago. I don't need to sit there and like worry about it. There's other things to be done in my set. That,
you got to focus in on what you want to be kind of performing, and you know, with all this DJ software and stuff we've got access to now, like, it's a bit of cognitive overload. You know, you got way too much shit to concentrate on. You want to focus on the two turntables, the fucking the faders and your technique, and your raw style, rather than having to load the next song or make sure you've duplicated the deck over right, or you know, like I've seen so many routines like fall down because of a bad loading. Or someone hit the wrong button or whatever. It's just. I
mean, even I go back to that one. But Craze was gonna do his new slaves routine is like the demo.
Yeah.
He starts up and then he's just like, fuck, stops, and he's like, I completely all my files are screwed up. I don't know what I did. And he was like, somebody from Native Instruments come help, and they came over and like hopped on his laptop, and then he was like, I changed some shit around yesterday, some file, and I just can't figure out what I did. And then he's like, started again, and then he was like, fuck, again after a minute. And then he's like, see, even me.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it took him 5 minutes of staring at his computer, and then he's like, all right, and then he did the set. But I mean, like, it happens to the best of the best. You know?
Exactly. Yeah. So, like, and that's kind of like a bit with what I talked about in this lecture at Sample Music Fest last night, is like the idea that turntablists in one way or another, we're programmers. Like, you're programming a set, you're programming the way that it's going to move forward. Right? You're a selector.
The classic term.
Yeah, exactly.
It is for sure a programmer. Like,
exactly. So when you're setting out a routine and stuff, you're kind of designing the way that you're going to flow through it and what's the most efficient way for you. going the vanilla way of just having everything in a frigging in a list and stuff may not be the most efficient way for you. And there's always kind of, well, for me, I think there's always going to be a better way. And I'm not to say what's the best way for any one DJ.
Right.
But for me, it's like I know what could probably benefit me, and I like experimenting with stuff. So trying to have a way to serialize or initialize my routine by pressing one button and then moving on to section 2 by pressing another button. It means I can just focus in on just getting to that next cut because the judges are looking to give points.
Right.
They won't generally give the same point twice. You get a nod for a good scratch, a good technical scratch, a good technical juggle, or some good creativity. The judge isn't going to sit there on a 2-minute juggle and keep on going, that's another point, it's another point. It's kind of like, you move forward, you get a point, conquer that one, and move forward. So that's kind of like, well, I want my routine to sort of seem a lot more effortless with that whole moving forward thing. So developing a little macro system where I can press a button and it does a lot of stuff for me. It's not cheating, it's an assistant.
It just loads it up.
It loads it up, But the fact that I kind of had to program it was sort of some of the reality of how this software already works. Like, for example, if you duplicate a deck from one to the other, it takes some time for the software to do that.
It's like there's a little...
it takes a few milliseconds or whatever. But, for example, if you wanted to have like a magic button in Traktor and you mapped the same operation, like say I wanted to duplicate a deck from left to right and then I wanted to like move my track selection down, so I'm selecting the next one or something like that, or I wanted to do something straight after that, you kind of have to wait for that operation to be finished or something like that. It was like, how do I space them out? So I kind of sort of came up with this thing where it's like, I got all the different like commands I want to send Traktor, I'll map all those up to the different MIDI notes, so when Traktor receives that MIDI note, it knows what to do with it. But in Max MSP, I can set up this thing that's like, okay, this button here is going to do this command, and this command, and this command, and space all of them out over the course of 1 second or half a second or whatever. So it means it's not, when you press the button, all of it's not going to happen at once, because unfortunately within Traktor you can't tell it what the priority is.
Right.
It might like move the deck. It might choose the next track down in the list and then duplicate. Kind of like, oh fuck, similar to what you were sort of saying with crazes. You might move 1 or 2 songs in your playlist,
right.
and then all of a sudden you're in no man's land. So I kind of am starting to set things up a little more sort of procedurally like that, and I'm finally starting to get organized enough where, like, if I've finished a routine, I'll save the Traktor mapping, I'll save all the different files, I'll save all the different playlists and stuff. Traktor is really good for being able to save everything about the environment as a preset, and you can choose what aspects of it you don't want to
import or export.
Exactly. So that's really, really handy. Cool. It means like if you've got a really like wacky, like a really advanced like New Slaves kind of routine, you don't have to like sort of stay in the vanilla like club mode of your thing. You just load it up into that mode and then kind of away you go. So it's like I'm finally starting to get organized to the point where I've got a folder in, say, Queensland regional DMC this year. I've got all the stuff I can refer back to.
Right.
As opposed to like, going back to DMCs in the day, like I'd have to find those records with the stickers still on them.
And the taper they wrote the list down.
All that. And like I just probably can't remember so much of that stuff. So it's good that I'm kind of getting to the point now where I can hold all this stuff in there. But another thing I kind of do, which is like fun, and it also represents a lot of work, is like I try to start with a clean slate every time I make a new routine. Like, don't start with like everything's already mapped up, because that's going to lead you effectively down a very similar path every time.
And you're going to end up repeating.
Exactly.
Not advancing or innovating either.
Exactly. And like with all the stuff that you got on these modern DJ mixes, like you're not going to really touch it in the confines of a DMC routine. When was the last time you saw someone touch an EQ knob in a DMC routine? Like those are like, that's six or so knobs that could be doing something useful to you. It could be an effect parameter. It could be something. It really could be anything. It's like I'm not going to be the one to say what you should be doing with it, but I definitely reckon record,
Yeah.
you should be doing something with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, being able to MIDI map stuff in Traktor or Serato, and then trick it out with some more stuff. Have that that rabbit in the hat from integrating some Max MSP stuff is kind of exciting. And you can be playing with numbers, you can be playing with audio streams, you can be like drawing graphics, you can be talking with external systems via like different kind of coding technologies.
Yeah, MIDI translator to whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Or you could talk to servers and stuff now. Like it's just like it's really kind of becoming more and more limitless what you could get your
everything's got an API nowadays, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to control some sort of like, I don't know, like a drilling mining robot over in Western Australia, I could control with turntables or something like that. It's just like, in fact, that's sort of a little bit of inspiration for me as well. My father is a computer programmer, and he did a lot of work for a mining and development kind of institution in Australia called CSIRO, and he was kind of like exploring all these sorts of things like virtual reality and remote controlling and augmented reality before it's become like real household sort of name.
And apply it to their work.
Exactly. So he came up with systems where you could control a remote mining rig from your office wherever and stuff. And that stuff was fairly exciting to me. It's just like you can interface anything to anything. It's just like you just kind of have to work out the way to connect them together.
How to make the connection and make the translation.
Exactly. And that's been my biggest kind of effort over the last few years, is trying to find how to get this data out of stuff. Some things are really easy, like getting MIDI out of a theta, because it's already like the device is already made in such a way. But other times, like, you have to kind of be a little bit more sneaky or a bit more creative as to how you're going to get the data out. Things like how fast is the vinyl going forwards and backwards. That was like the biggest one for me. And I had so many different like experiments where I would try, see how this works, or it had, things would work to various degrees. Some were better than others.
Certain accuracies or certain thresholds or something.
Frame rates, all that sort of stuff. And I'm finally getting to a point now where I understand it quite well, and I know the way that I want to get this data out. And
so I was curious about that, actually. That was on my mind the last few minutes about ask about that. Like, so you started messing with Max XP. What year was that, you think? Do you remember? That was at university? So
it was at university.
2002, 3.
No, it would have been about 2007.
Okay,
2008.
And then so then you start messing with it. Then what was the kind of the jump from that to like, I guess what I'm thinking about is like the demo you did with the the notation. So like I'm curious. I guess you were trying that. I talked to you briefly about it the other day, and you said like you had been trying. The idea was there for so long, and it was like, how do you do it? And a lot of people had the similar idea, like how do you do it? But so then I guess was Serato and Traktor had been a huge advantage when you started to try to do this, right? Because of the time code vinyl.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't really understand. I know generally how the time code works, but like, so how accurate was that to get, for example, the vinyl speed movements? To get the data out from that kind of thing.
Well, my first experiments were using a data point in Traktor that you can map as an output called beat phase. And when you've got a grid, you've got a beat grid. Quarter notes are divided by these grid lines, and the beat phase represents 0 in the middle, and then you kind of have these values that are kind of like telling you as it around. And so it's this number that kind of goes around like that. And I found like, that's useful, but it doesn't give me enough resolution. So how can I subdivide that or get more resolution out of it? I found like in Traktor you can actually map I could have 2 beat phase outputs and then sort of split them, like this MIDI message is responsible for the first half of the beat phase, and then this other one's responsible for the second half. So instead of having from 0 to 127, I've got 0 to 256 then. And then if I double that again and double again, and every time I added more and more of these subdivisions, I start to get a lot more accuracy. And then in Max, it was just like, okay, I've got these crazy streams of MIDI coming in. I got to massage them into one number again. So like stack them onto each other.
Add them all up.
Exactly. And it's it eventually worked. And once I started to get the vinyl to talk to different like parameters and stuff, like I started like trying to integrate it into like DMC routines and things like that. It's like, oh, this is cool. I can talk to like, you know, VST synths and stuff in my routines and start integrating more. It's like this is really, really cool. But, you know, behind it all is like this dream of this kid who had the printed out turntable transcription methodology booklet, you know, that Radon, and it was just like, I had that printed out. I've still got the original version that I printed out, and like I would just take it to school, and it was just like, I never had any other friends that would scratch or anything like that, but you know, I would just sit there and read this, and it was just like, this is fucking amazing. It's just like, one day I'm going to be able to do these, and like, this is how I'm going to be able to practice it and stuff.
I still have the like grand plan. I bought from him the like, you know, mega resolution file.
And put it up behind your wall.
Oh man, yeah, I got a new flat I'm moving into next year that we bought a flat, and I'm like, that's the DJ wall. Like I've always wanted that since I was like 18 years old. I'm like 38. I'm finally gonna have it next year.
Exactly, and it's an amazing form of notation that is really descriptive, and it's really, really great. And I think it's awesome that the turntablist world have sort of adopted it in the way that they have, and they can share their technique with each other.
Yeah, definitely.
But there was this sort of phenomena that I kind of it's this cool term that I discovered from an Australian artist called Robin Fox, who makes like harsh noise performances, and he also turns the noise of his performances into a visual laser show, and he uses this term called mechanical synesthesia. And what he's talking about is the mechanics of the sounds that his performance is making, and that's being turned into the visual synesthesia of the lasers that are happening. So you're watching the oscillations happen. And I thought, this term is really great because it sort of lends itself to what I'm struggling with turntablism, in that like I can scratch. I know the scratch I sort of want to that I'm doing. I can hear it in my head, but if I try to describe it to a friend by drawing it in TTM on paper, I'm losing some of the nuances and some of the things that might be unique to this particular scratch that I can't see, and I kind of lack that mechanical synesthesia to be able to sort of see it visually as I'm doing it. Like I can see the physical form. Right. And all of that, and I can hear it and all of that stuff, but unfortunately I couldn't gather that.
Well, like somebody could say like, hey, here's a 1 click and then 3 clicks back, but like without the velocity of the push forward and then the velocity of the back, or you understand the mechanics, but you don't really hear it by looking at that.
Yeah. So like, I guess it was a bit of a dream that, you know, for quite a few years, it was like, it would be fantastic to have something that describes to you in this notation format, in a live way, what you're doing, sort of similar to like, you know, for the pianists, they've got Sibelius and stuff like that. It just shows you in musical staff what you're doing as you're doing it. It can detect if you've done a quarter note, you've done a rest, and all that sort of stuff, and it's live. I don't know if it's as useful to a traditional musician to watch the notes that they're playing, but for a turntablist to watch that stuff is extremely valuable. So for all of these years, I've like, once I kind of realized that I can pull in data from all these different points and from the vinyl and all of that, it's just like, okay, I've got the ingredients I need to make a live visualizer and stuff. And like, I searched the net and like was sort of kind of finding out like who had done some stuff already. I found this cool video by I think the dude was like Man Sterry, and he was mates with the guy DJ Daddy Dog, and they were playing around with Serato video. So I discovered like this little experiment by Man Sterry and DJ Daddy Dog, and it was kind of like, it was like a bit of a live visualizer. It had some of the characteristics that I wanted to see, and they'd kind of done it in this technology. It was a feature that was added into Serato video that lets you not just drop a video file into it. You could drop this sort of like a program file into it, and it was like it's called a Quartz Composer file. Quartz Composer, like another programming environment that you can find inside OS X. And it's similar to Max MSPs, that you patch things together and you flow your data across, but it performs sort of functions that are more reserved for generating graphics and screensavers and, you know, music visualizers and that sort of thing. So it was like, I kind of looked into the way that they did it, and, you know, Man Stereo was nice enough to sort of share his building blocks with the world on his website. And from there, I was actually able to kind of experiment with things in Serato video myself, or it was like, which one's better, Serato or Tractor for doing this? And it was like both of them had their pros and cons, and I was just like, in order to do this, I'm going to still need one of these. And as things move forward, I can't guarantee that these are always going to be available to us. So, as Serato moves forward with versions, unfortunately now I don't even think you can load a Quartz Composer file into Serato video unless you've got back as far as OS X, like maybe Sierra. If you've gone high Sierra, you've gone too far. Right. So you're limiting yourself if you want to keep it, if you want to have these functions. Like, unfortunately, I try not to update my laptop anymore because a new security update or a major update or something like that, it just adds more risks to the system. So like I spent loads of time experimenting with trying to get these different data points out, but I eventually found some other ways to kind of get some of this vinyl position data out there. And there are some cool projects out there. There's one called Xwax, which is like a open source DVS software.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the one I saw. I thought it was a different name that I saw before. But
there's one called Mix as well.
Yeah, one's like, because the DJ Krabs from Germany, he was doing like a little Raspberry Pi DVS setup.
Yeah, exactly.
With one of those.
Yeah, so you can compile this library or this product onto a dedicated little computer, or you can actually take the library of the code that's responsible for understanding timecode. To a certain degree, not in the whole way that Tracker or Serato do, because that's their patented, that's their secret sauce. But I've got now I've got actually a dedicated Max MSP object that's been sort of tailor-made using this Xwax code library. It's been compiled in a way that Max can handle it as an object, and I can pipe some audio signal into it, my timecode, and then it now can tell me if I'm giving it a try. I tell it the argument, I'm giving you a Tractor signal or a Serato signal. It knows now if I'm going this fast forwards, this fast backwards, and like just having that moving number, positive or a negative, to a various amount that describes how fast and slow you're moving the vinyl. And if you're not moving the vinyl at all, it's just going to be a 0. Right. Like that's super useful. Yeah. So now I've got this dedicated little like Max object. Things are becoming a lot more easy. So I can focus just in on like massaging some of that vinyl data into things like an absolute number. Like when you're moving forwards and backwards, that's just relative to where you are now. Right. But with calculations and mathematics, you can actually derive an absolute position just by stacking that number onto itself over and over and over again, and you'll end up with a value that climbs forward or climbs backwards, depending on how you're moving the vinyl forwards and backwards, which is what I needed to draw TTM.
Draw the movements.
Exactly. And I feel like I've kind of got it to a good point now where you can load a beat, it'll generate a procedurally drawn grid that is in time with the beat, with the worm or the line, the notation line that's moving along, and it can definitely sort of help you sort of understand some of your scratching techniques as you're doing them, like because I've worked really hard to try and get that latency as low as possible. So what you're doing is what you're seeing, rather than seeing it in hindsight. Sort of thing. Watching back a video or even 2 seconds delay would be very jarring. Sort of thing. You need to kind of get it as tight as possible, and that's been my biggest kind of challenge.
Where are you at now with that, with the latency? Like, do you know how many?
I wouldn't be able to tell you milliseconds, but it's at least enough. Like it's fast enough to be able to sort of to inform your scratching immediately, where you can actually see where you may be making a quick mistake here or there, or if you dragged it back a little bit too far. Some of the pitfalls with some of this, and it's just only because of the way that computers work, is like you can't measure an infinite amount of things between 2 points in time. You're limited by the rate at which a computer can process this stuff. And when it's analyzing an audio signal coming in, it can't immediately tell just from one small little byte of information that was this pitch. You need to actually sample a bunch of samples in order to do the Fourier transform to understand this kind of what pitch frequency you're at. So inherently you kind of get that latency anyway, but because you can't measure an infinite number of times between 2 points, you're limited to how fast a computer can really kind of take these measurements, and because of that, you can't turn a relative number into a super accurate, like absolute number. And this is the issue that people are having with phase at the moment, with Q drift and stuff like that. And I completely sympathize with the issue they're having. It's purely because of the limitations of computers these days, or just the fact of the matter is you can't measure things an infinite number of times. So you kind of have to be a little bit more tricky, and you kind of emulate this sort of stuff.
Yeah, I wonder, because I know they put out like an update, or a beta update, and apparently so that's probably what they've done, is some sort of like...
They've tried to massage it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Possibly something like if it knows it's being spun back really, really fast or something like that, it knows it may have missed a couple of frames, so maybe compensate
for it.
Yeah. So like that could be doing it. And like Bob Kruscher from Catalyst Controller last night was helping explain it to the layman. It's like the way that sort of Tractor and Serato works with their noise map and stuff like that is, when you're in relative mode, you're not just in relative mode like behind the scenes.
Right.
The Tractor system or the Serato system is actually it's polling the whole like absolute noise, like the whole vinyl itself anyway, to check where you are roughly, and it's checking a few times a second.
Right.
Although it's moving your sound files forwards and backwards based on your relative movements, it's still double checking against the whole thing to see where it is, and that's where you can get more accurate 12 o'clocks and you'll eliminate your Q drift. But because we've got these devices and these calculations that are trying to derive that rather than actually knowing what it is, you kind of run into this issue, and it's just the fact of the matter. Like, you know, it's
interesting. Yeah, I didn't know. I was wondering, because I was just reading people griping, on like group or whatever, and then some people seem to not have the issue, and some people did. So I was like, well, that's odd, because that means what's the variable different? What's the difference? They're the same units.
Yeah.
So that means it's something else external in my head.
Yeah.
I was like, so it's some computer thing or some driver thing or some...
Yeah, look, everyone's computer has got a different bunch of stuff installed on
it. Blocking or doing or changing or just doing so many things.
Clock speeds, chipsets, it could be really anything, right down to the bare bones of the computer that lets you run it.
So I guess the big question I had when I saw you're going to be like giving this lecture and showing the transcribing thing was like, are you going to release a like package that Joe Blow can download?
Well, look, I'd absolutely love to.
And run it on his computer for fun, or whatever. Is that in your plans, or is it
something
definitely you want to do in the future? Yeah.
It's something I'd really like to do in the future. I kind of believe that the culture deserves this. It's something that we've needed for a long time. I've like, the reason I've done it is because I've grown impatient in waiting for the actual product to come out.
Yeah.
As a thing, like I've seen so many attempts on the internet, and there are, and I'm not the only one in the game kind of trying to do this. There are other players who I know are actually working on ones themselves, and it's not really like, I'm not trying to sort of make a huge name for myself or trying to make any money out of this. It's just like, this is really just like from the passion of being a kid who wanted to see a live turntable notations kind of thing. So I want this to work out in a fantastic way, and I've met some amazing people along the way. Like before I arrived in Berlin, I spent some time with this dude called Matt Kiemeswa, and you can find him like on the net, Matt Crime or and stuff. But it's like kind of amazing because I've discovered that he's been on like parallel lines with me for a really long time. Like he's been learning Max MSP, and he's been developing like a live notation thing himself. But his motivations have been also very much from an artistic point of view, where he saw the turntables as a form of input for being able to draw stuff. And he kind of does the whole synesthesia sort of thing, where he kind of has like a bit of a mental image about what he wants to draw. Like he has some sonic content that he wants to introduce into an artwork, and he can literally draw pictures with his turntables like an Etch-a-Sketch. And then for me, it's just like, this is beautiful. But what's incredible to me is the fact that we've been working on the same thing parallel for these years,
and didn't even have any clue.
We didn't even know they existed, and now we hang out and we start talking about our trials and tribulations or our experiments, and it's just like, oh shit, I've been doing that. I tried that. It was just like, wow. It was just like, it's like, and that's why I kind of think it's like to say I had that idea is
It's crazy, right?
it's kind of crazy because in one way or another, a lot of us had similar ideas. It's kind of down to those who actually
executed
went
to
and stuff like
the
that.
further reaches of investigating it.
Yeah, and like Nat Kingswire is quite close with Radon as well because of like they have both championed like forms of like turntable transcription and notation and stuff like that, and it's just I think it's just so fucking awesome just to finally find these minds.
Speaking of that, how do people? Do you have any besides your personal Facebook or Instagram? Is there any place you have that you're kind of showing information about this, or?
Not really sharing much around. Like people have said, you do well with a Patreon or something like that. Where, people want to sort of support your creative.
Or just in general, if somebody sees this and they're like, "Oh, I've solved something that he might like," or "I have." How do they get in touch? Just say,
I like.
What's your way of getting bugged?
Hit me on Instagram. That's generally a good way, and I'll probably give you my Discord handle. I really like Discord at the moment. It's a chat client, and you can set up servers for different interest groups and things like that, and you can sort of moderate them in different ways. I really like it because it's a cool sort of environment where you can share files and you can set them up in a really intricate kind of way.
Vex did it before.
Vex uses his to a really fantastic degree with his live streams that pairs up with the Twitch group. And it's a fantastic little community, but I really like Discord at the moment for community.
What's your Instagram then for
creatives? My Instagram is Nikk C. I'll put it up on the screen.
Yeah, I'll put a link to it.
Unfortunately, there are too many like girls and like influencers and stuff that are called Nikki something. So
that's all good. I'll slap it on the description.
Yeah, words.
Nice.
So you find me on Instagram. Send me a message. I'll always respond. Sorry in advance if it takes me a little while to do it. I live on the other side of the world, so I've got all the time in the world to talk this nerdy sort of stuff. It's kind of what I sort of live for. As a kid,
I feel like I could just keep keep going on for hours with you right now.
For sure.
So many random questions, but I still got to set up for the battle today.
I got to set up for the hands-on as well. Like I'm hoping today that some of these hungry hands can actually play with the
it's really cool. I'll definitely. Do you know what time you're doing the hands-on?
Should be. I haven't seen the time.
Yeah, I want to pop over there too and get some footage of it and try it out myself and make you shows and stuff.
Yeah, and it'll be exciting to me as well, to see some of these scratches, really put some fire into it.
Yeah, we gotta get Marvel on that. He was doing those dirty little shirts yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. See some red mist action. See it all. But imagine a battle where not only are you watching the decks and hearing it, but you're watching the notation.
Just thinking about the stream today we'll do with the battle. It'd be so cool at the bottom to overlay the notation going by as they cut.
That'd be great. Yeah, it would be amazing. It would really change the game.
I wish I would have thought about that before.
Bug you
and get a feed of it.
Nozzle Logan Wolf last night was just this will change the game for judging. You can see it. You can see all the shit. And it's really good for revealing parts of your technique that you may not realize that you're doing,
and things that your habits, right? Your repeating habits, both good and bad, or whatever.
Exactly.
There's things that you like, your default little drag, or your default little.
I can't remember. It was there's a famous jazz teacher or something like that, and it was that lick that you always do.
Yeah.
Don't do it anymore. And then you'll get better. So it's cool.
That's classic. That's I even with scratch records, sometimes I'm I gotta stop using that record because I'm stuck in that record for fucking 4 months straight or something crazy. I don't fuck around with any other records. Even if it's an awe sound, it's that awe sound or that record or whatever.
Exactly.
Getting too comfortable with that record. I need to switch to a new record now.
Speaking of which, though, man, Path of Least Resistance by Scratch Lords this year. Boys, you fucking set the bar really high.
Yeah.
That record has not left my turntables for...
I just got the Test Press 7-inch. They're sexy. It has little tiny samurais around the circle. It's all etched as well.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Awesome.
Yeah, I got a Bug Jimmy penguin for one of those Scratch Lords beanies.
Yeah, definitely. Man.
But look, it definitely, I completely understand having a particular record locked on that deck for a while and you really exhaust the shit out of it.
But it's good, man. It's lovely.
Definitely. I kind of love that about the old routines where
the Cuban,
you can hear that it's almost like it's sound design into what it characterizes. You don't get that clinical cleanness from Tractor or Serato. It's like it's almost as if you want to sample the burnt record.
Yeah.
You want to dub that and then work with that version.
We need like a dirty record filter.
Yeah.
Record static filter or something on the S9.
Exactly. Well,
flip it on.
with Datablism,
you could do that easily.
With Datablism, you could add a pop that has a slightly different variation when you're clicking your fade. If you want to emulate an old PMX or something like that, you can do that. It's just like there is like if there are certain characteristics about a certain EQ or something like that you like about a mixer, like this Maximus P,
just make it happen.
It offers fucking everything. So it's. Yeah, we really could go on forever about
But
everything. Guys, check out the Electro Did It sample music festival. It might help you understand this a little bit more.
For sure. I'll make sure to link to it once it's up.
Yeah, word.
Word, man. Thanks, dude. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
It was really, really interesting, man. Thank you.
Awesome. Cheers.
All right. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Later.